Hi fashion lovers, welcome to my channel. So today it is straight slash pencil skirt, alright, short pencil skirt. This is our first beginners skirt we are making. Okay, so basically this is the measurement we are using: waist 40, hip 47, skirt length 18, band, there will be band on it, and the band will be 1 inches. Okay, so the waist measurement divided by 4. Why are we dividing by 4? Because when you want to cut the skirt, you fold the fabric or your pattern into 4. That is why we are dividing by 4. Okay, so your waist and hip, you divide by 4. Then whatever it gives you, you add allowance. Okay, you cannot sew without allowance. All right, so for those, if you have not seen my video on allowance, it will be attached to this video. Okay, so in this on the waist we have that allowance as sewing allowance. On the hip we have only waist sewing allowance of 2 inches, and when you total it, it gives you your waist measurement. Skirt, we are adding 2 inches for the hemming. The 2 inches added to the 18 inches is folding allowance. All right, and the band is 1 inches. It doesn't no much difference, so we are not doing anything about the band. So for it to cut, if it's a fabric, if it's a pattern paper, you will fold using the highest measurement. According to our calculation, the hip is our highest measurement, which is 12. So you are either to fold 12 and half, 13, 14, at most 15, so you don't waste fabric. Okay, so we are folding using our highest measurement, which is the hip. Have that in mind. If it's your fabric, if it's your pattern paper, you fold using the highest measurement. Okay, you can see my folding. All right, I went for 14. Okay, while the highest measurement is 12, I went for 14. Okay, that way I will have just little allowance, all right, to be able to cut. Okay, secondly, I will not be wasting fabric or pattern. Have that in mind. Okay, that is the first thing. Then once you have done that, the next thing is you start marking your vertical lines. Okay, starting with you, the beginning is our waist. All right, here is our waist. Now there's hip line. I'm going for 9 inches. What is hip line? Hip line is the distance from your waist to your hip, that point where your buttock is more. That is our hip line. Okay, so for this measurement I'm using 9. Now how do you determine your hip line? What determines your hip line is where you wear your skirt from. Okay, remember when I was doing the measurement? If you have not seen video of how to measure, is on my I will equally attach it here. There's what we call natural waistline and lower waist. If you wear from lower waist, your hip line becomes smaller. If you wear from natural waist, your hip line increases. Okay, so that is my hip line, which I use 9 to get it, and that is my skirt length. You already know the skirt length. I measured it. The beginning is our waist. That is W, our waist. Okay, so having gotten it this way, the next thing is you start marking that measurement you have at the beginning. It is time to mark it. Okay, now remember the waist measurement, the calculation we had earlier. We had the 12 and half at the waist in total. Then at the hip we have about 13, right? At the hip you mark your hip measurement. Now when you come to the skirt, if you're going for a straight skirt, you know those kind of skirt that has a short those kind of straight skirt that is not pencil, especially if you're sewing those mini skirts, is usually straight skirt. Exactly what you marked on the hip is what you mark on that skirt length. Okay, exactly what you marked on the hip. The hip has 13. At your skirt length, you equally mark 13 if you're going for a straight skirt. Now, the difference between a straight skirt and pencil skirt is just the down, the hem, the skirt at the skirt length. All right. Now, if your hip and skirt length is the same, it becomes a straight skirt. Now, if you minus something from the hip measurement, it becomes a mark it becomes a waist, it becomes a pencil skirt. Okay, so guys, we have, for us to mark our pencil skirt, I'll be taking in 1.5 inches. Okay, now let's do the calculation. My hip measurement gives us 47. All right, 47. When you minus 4 from your hip, it gives us what? If you have 47, you take out 4 inches. Now, what you minus is determined by the length of your skirt. For this short skirt, I'm minusing 4. Okay, you can see it. It gives me 43. Then I'll divide it by 4. Whatever it gives me is what I'll mark. Now I have 10, 1/4. All right. You see that? That is what I'll mark. I did hip minus 4 inches. Whatever it gives me, I divided it by 4. Now, this is when you want a pencil skirt. That is what I marked in. The other one is a straight skirt. But because I'll be sewing it, I added 1 inches sewing allowance to this skirt. There is 1 inch sewing allowance. All right, that is what I added now. Okay, so that is my pencil skirt. The other one is my straight skirt. Understand, is actually one thing. The difference is the skirt length, the down part of your skirt. Do you want it penciled or you want it straight? Do you want it shapy or you want it straight? All right, so basically this is the front pattern of the skirt. All right, then you pin before you cut. Hold it down. Now please make sure you get a pattern paper and try this out. If you're confused in any way, drop your question on the comment section. I will be reading it. Okay, and for those on my free WhatsApp group, okay, drop a question, send a question to my WhatsApp. Like if you have my number, send a question to my WhatsApp. All right, I will be answering it. Okay, and if you have not joined my free online class for beginners, click on the link on my profile. All right, you connect, or on the description of this video there is a WhatsApp link there. Click on it and join the WhatsApp link, the WhatsApp group. Okay, so that is how you cut. So basically this is the front pattern. This is the front of the pencil skirt. Now this video will come in part 1 and part 2. This is part 1. If you're done watching the part 1, make sure you watch the part 2 for the sewing, how the dress was sewn, how the sewing will be done will be in part 2. So make sure you watch the part 2. Now let's continue. I have gotten my front pattern, the skirt, the front part. The next thing is I need to get the back part, the back. Now, if you're to do what I'm doing now on pattern paper, just fold, make your pattern paper even. Okay, but if you're to do that on a fabric, remember the highest measurement is 14. Add 2 inches to it, making it 16. What is the 2 inches for? Sewing allowance. Sorry, not sewing allowance, zip allowance. Okay, Because of zip allowance, that is why you're increasing it. So if you're to fold, you fold like 17. Okay, you fold 17. But if you're using pattern paper, just fold it into 2. What is left will not be much, like I did right now. Okay, so when you fold, you consider your zip allowance, you mark your zip allowance. Now your zip allowance on this skirt can be 1.5, can be 2. As a beginner, don't be in a hurry to use 1. Stay with 1.5 or 2. If possible, stay with 2 inches as your zip allowance. That makes you, shows you're still learning. Okay, when you perfect it, you can reduce your sewing allowance. All right, so I'm marking my zip allowance before placing the skirt pattern. Remember I told you your zip allowance can be 2 inches or 1 inches. Okay, so that is my zip allowance. There is a video of different types of allowance. Zip allowance is one of them. We have button allowance, so many allowance. Okay, so let's keep going. So once you mark your zip allowance, you place your front pattern. Now watch how I placed it. Watch the placing. Where the zip allowance stops, that is where I started placing from. Meaning the difference between your back pattern and front pattern is zip allowance. Be aware. Okay. Then you pin. Once you pin, make sure it is well placed. All right, you get your scissors and cut. Now watch my cutting. I'm cutting the pencil part, not the straight part. Okay. I need to hold this down and cut it properly well. It should not shift. So guys, that is it. My front and back pattern is ready. Okay. Now, having gotten this, I need to open the zip allowance up. There is every possibility that you can mistake back pattern for front if you don't open it up. So watch me as I open it up. If your fabric is like this, open it up. If your pattern paper is like this, open it up. So this is the fabric I'll be using to cut this. Okay, this is the fabric I'll be using. Now for the course of this training, all right, majority of I'll be using more of Ankara, you know, to sew so many styles, but hopefully by the time we get to advance, we use different another fabric. But let's just keep going, guys. So this is the fabric. I hope it's beautiful. This is the fabric we are using. Look at it very well. So first thing first, we have to fold. Now we already have a pattern. We don't need to mark anything again. All we need to do right now is just place it and cut. All right, that is all we need to do. So remember the front pattern we did cut folding of 14. Now I want the skirt and the front skirt and the back skirt to be cut, one straight line. Just once you fold, you can cut the two. So for that, I'll be folding about 17. All right, so that it will be able to cut both the back and front. Okay, so you get your fabric and place it. Place your pattern paper and trace it out. All right, now you need to be very careful. Remember, the unfolded side has to be even with the fabric. Okay, you see that fabric there, you have to be careful. Now you either pin or you get something and hold it down before cutting. All right. So guys, you have to be careful with the cutting. All right, so that is it. And the front pattern has been cut, it has been taken care of. The next is the back pattern, and the same thing, you place and cut. Okay, so guys, you place it and cut. Okay, now we know the back has opening at the center back and at the side, so it can go either way. All right, it can be facing where there is opening, it can be facing the other side, just like I turned it, but the front cannot go like this. All right, so the back has the possibility of changing it to wherever you think fits you well. Then you cut. You get scissors and you cut. Now watch what I'm cutting. I've already added allowance to my calculation, so I don't need, when cutting I'll be adding allowance. All I need to do is cut exactly. Okay, you can see my cutting, I'm cutting exactly. Now my front pattern and back pattern is ready. The next thing is to start sewing. All right, now the sewing video, this is part one, the sewing video is next.